right. So, now that we're about halfway through the entire show, I wanted to make a quicker video to correct some of the things that I missed in previous episodes and highlight some of the good points that I saw in the comments. And as a show of thanks for everyone who has been very patiently waiting for the Season 4 video, thought I'd give you a little sneak peek freebie episode. So stick around to the very end and then you can see that as well. Thanks again, guys. In the national anthem, I criticized it for being too crass and gross of a pilot to keep many viewers around. And while I still stand by that, I was illuminated with some new context that I had no idea about before. Several commenters pointed out that there were rumors and scandals about UK governments engaging in acts with pigs back in the early 2000s. The show was made to sort of parody or bring to life those rumors, and it became an absolute hit over there. Like I said, without that context, I still think 15 Million Merits or the entire history of you would have made a much better pilot. Speaking of which, many people thought I gave that episode far too low of a score. And I think I somewhat agree. Had it been the first time I'd seen any Black Mirror episodes, the concept would have been much more mind-blowing and novel. The idea that you could rewind any memory and view it as if it was filmed. I think after so many episodes featuring variants of this, I didn't find it quite as interesting this time around. I will admit, I was being a bit nitpicky with some of the plot holes, but hey, this was my first time making a video like this, so I was still kind of feeling out what was fair and what wasn't. I also don't know how I forgot that babies can have blue or different colored eyes when they were very young. It literally happened to me. I had blue eyes as a baby and now have green as an adult. In my defense, the baby having different eyes was clearly what they were trying to point out with the cinematography. In Season 2, Episode 2, White Bear, someone pointed out how my utilitarian approach to the episode is missing the point. The point was more so about the morality of punishing someone for a crime that they don't even remember doing. I can see where they were coming from, for sure. It's obvious that the torture Victoria endured far surpassed what she was due, even if she did remember the crime. I think I was more so looking for a practical reason that so many people would be led to engage in the play. I found it hard to believe because as it stands, it mostly seems like a pseudo-justified sadism for attention. Ah, shit, I just described cancel culture. Well, alright. By far, the largest thing that I missed was a post-credits scene at the end of the Waldo moment. I mentioned how I wondered what the next election cycle would look like, and it just so happens we get to see how everything ended in this scene. An officer shines a flashlight in Jamie's face, waking him and a bunch of other homeless people sleeping under an overpass. They shove him out, and Jamie walks up to a huge LCD screen with Waldo on it, showcasing that Waldo is now being used as a mascot of some kind for students in China. Waldo's on the back of a plane and is now a complete and global political icon with the bare bones catchphrases, change, hope, and believe. Jamie throws a bottle at the screen, and the officers run up and tase him. The camera pans up to see Waldo's face plastered on all the buildings in the city, and the officers beat Jamie on the ground, and then walk away. I guess we did get to find out how it ends. It's obviously nothing significant enough to reevaluate the rating or anything like that, but it is a fun post-credit scene nonetheless. As far as Season 3 goes, there really isn't much mentioning, I feel like, apart from the misconception I had with Shut Up and Dance, but I already went over that in the re-upload for the Season 3 video, so there's no need to go over it again here. Oh, I did see a good point on Nosedive. One person pointed out how the rating system itself doesn't make any sense at all. It clearly can't just be an average of ratings like how you would see on Google reviews, because at the end, Lacey ends up actually dipping below 1 star, which is lower than the lowest rating seemingly allowed to be made. The rating system is clearly very gerrymandered to fit whatever the plot needs in any given moment. And while I agree, I still appreciate the small details that they do give about how the rating works, like how little effect those lower in the hierarchy have compared to the elites. This might sound completely backwards and insane, but I actually think that the inner workings of how the ranking system work actually don't matter to the point of the episode about a ranking system. In the upcoming Season 4 video, I use this one as an example for a term I call the archetypal extreme. At its core, Nosedive is an exaggeration of the concept, life already changes somewhat depending on how people perceive you. What would it look like if that perception was fully documented and implemented into every aspect of life? Would it have been preferable to have the rating system be coherent? Absolutely. But the ways it tries to explore the different avenues as Lacey deteriorates, I find very interesting. And as promised, I'll give you a little glimpse as to what's going on over in Season 4. Just so happens to be one of the most iconic episodes in the show. Have a good one. Season 4, Episode 1, USS Callister. We watch an episode of a vintage Star Trek-esque show starring Todd Alquist and Liam McPoyle. Todd, or Captain Robert Daly, is the head of the ship. We see a scene involving an altercation with a villain named Valdak. Daly is shown to be quite the confident risk-taker. After he orders a defense-compromising blast towards Valdak, he opens comms and orders him to stand down. Valdak refuses, and Daly obliterates the ship. The crewmates then tell him that somehow Valdak has escaped with an important crystal, and ask if they should pursue him. Daly says no, and to let him go for now. The crewmates all then congratulate Captain Daly on his excellent decision-making and cheer, with him kissing the women on board. Triumphant music plays and their ship flies out into the distance, and we fade to black. What an amazing episode. Concept, 5 out of 5. Execution, 5 out of... Oh, wait, that wasn't it. Sorry, my bad. We now see the actor for Captain Daly on an elevator, begrudgingly looking down at the floor. He walks into the office towards a receptionist, and she looks awfully similar to one of the aliens that were on board in the show. He walks past a group of people leaning back in their chairs, and their eyes are rolled into the back of their head, and we learn about, quote, the most immersive gaming experience, known as Infinity. He walks past and greets another guy, mistakenly using his name from the show. He's much more awkward and disrespected here. We also see the CEO of the company, previously his main lackey on board, named Walton. Robert looks out his office window and sees some people making fun of him for tripping over a gym bag earlier. He gets a knock on his door and a woman enters. She excitedly introduces herself as Nanette, saying she just started today and admires him for being the designer for Infinity. He awkwardly thanks her and she walks over to his shelf of VHS tapes of the show. They chat for a bit, and we find out that Robert was one of the co-creators of the company, and his only request was that their company be named after the ship from the show. The CEO comes in and asks if the update for the software will be up by this weekend. Robert starts to say that he will ask around, but is then interrupted, with Walton telling him that since he's in charge, he should be telling people what to do, not asking. Walton then notices Nanette and asks her if she would like a tour of the building. He bops Robert on the head and she walks out, saying once again how nice it was to meet him. He walks over to one of the programmers and asks him what the ETA is on the update, eyeing Nanette across the room. Kabir says that they could get it done by today, but that new trading systems were in the works, and if they're approved, it would push the update back by about 10 days. Robert isn't paying attention at all and blindly says yes and to do all of that. After work, Robert heads home and goes to his computer. He opens up a version of Infinity with the code name Space Fleet, the same name as the show. We then watch another scene play out with all his little minions at his beck and call. This seems to be how Robert asserts his dominance in some way. He grabs Walton by the throat and lifts him up into the air, forcing to call himself pathetic. He insults all the crewmates and uses Walton as a footrest. Content with his daily frustrations taken out, he exits the game. The next day, we see Robert staring at Nanette across the room. Walton leisurely walks up and takes a seat on her desk, complimenting her sweater. Man, is every higher-up here a creepy weirdo? Well, I mean, it is a AAA game development company, so yeah. The programmer from before comes in to confirm the new ETA for the patch, which is much more delayed due to the alterations that Robert approved. Robert thanks him, upset with himself for his mistake, and dismisses him. He gets another knock on the door, and his demeanor instantly changes. Nanette asks him if he would like a coffee, and he happily says yes. While she's making the coffee, she chats with another coworker, Lowry. Nanette says that she hated her old job because her boss was an asshole, and Lowry tells her that Walton is an alright guy, albeit a bit of a player. Nanette scoffs and says that, well, at least there's two bosses then. And then Lowry looks at her confused, and then says technically, yes, she supposes. It's clear that no one sees Robert as a boss in any capacity here. Nanette glazes Robert a little bit more, saying that he's the whole reason that she's here due to his excellence at programming. We pan to see that Robert is closely listening nearby, enjoying every word that she says. Lowry then asks her if she has a thing for Robert, and she instantly says no, nothing like that at all, stammering and almost grossed out by the notion. She's then told not to be too nice to him, or he will get a bit starey. She thanks Lowry as she walks away, and brings Robert his coffee, walking out without saying another word. He sadly looks down and watches her yet again as she sips her coffee across the room. Immediately after she leaves for the day, he pulls out a drawer with some disposable gloves and paces towards her desk. He reaches into her trash and puts the lid from her coffee into a bag. Back at home, he swabs the lid and puts it into a small machine. He runs an overnight protocol on his computer, and we can see that it will roughly be done by the time he's finished with work the next day. We then get a sequence of cuts back and forth between Nanette's face, Robert staring, and the progress bar on the protocol. It reaches 100%. We then cut to a room illuminating with electronic whirring. Nanette looks around and is now wearing a skimpy spacesuit. She walks around and calls if anyone can hear her, looking out a window into the vastness of space, now on board the USS Callister. She hears whispering in a nearby room and enters to see the rest of the crewmates from the show. Walton says it looks like there must be a new girl in the office and asks if she wants anything to drink. Lowry asks her name, and Nanette confusingly says that she should know as they literally just met the day before. She replies maybe in the real world, but that there's no way that she would know now. Nanette asks again what's going on, and Walton explains that they are aboard Robert Daly's ship, sarcastically referring to him as their fearless leader. Nanette identifies and introduces herself to everyone from work, then starts to go dizzy. Lowry catches her, she starts to fall and sits her down into a chair. She panics and asks for someone to explain what's going on again, and Lowry tells her that they are inside Infinity on a modded version, saying that this build is offline, so there's no chance of any code being detected and deleted. She takes a gulp of some space vodka and asks how they can get out, with Lowry replying that they can't. They all explain their various reasons for aggravating Daly enough that he would conjure digital clones to hold captive, and most of them are pretty mundane, with one being that he literally just brought him the wrong sandwich one time. Nanette panics again and starts to run around the room, and the ship suddenly whirs online, with the others saying that Captain Daly will be here any minute. She tries to run out of the room and they tell her not to go or he will do stuff to make her cooperate. Lowry tells her to just let her go, and she will learn on her own. She sprints through the halls and mashes buttons near the door to find a way of escape, and begins to glow and dissipate. A glitchy hum then takes her back to the control room where Captain Daly makes his salutations. The rest of the crew acts as if they've just met her, and Daly tells her to head to her post. She refuses, and he says that it's an order. She says she's not taking part of this, and Daly breaks character, saying almost with pity that it'll be much easier if she lets herself get into the role. She stands her ground, and Robert slowly approaches her, saying he's the captain of this ship. He then reaches his hand out, and Nanette mocks him, asking if he's going to throw a fireball. Robert then snaps his fingers, and her face suddenly disappears. She falls to the ground with muffled groaning, struggling to breathe. Daly kneels down and tells her that she won't die unless he wants her to, and can keep her in this state forever if she likes. He asks if she submits, she nods her blank head, and he pats her, saying, "Good girl." She's back to normal and gasps for air. Robert returns to his seat and gets back into character. She heads over to her station and then starts to mutter through her lines. She, Daly, and a few others then beam down to a planet to go investigate the location of the crystal. They get into another encounter with Valdak, who commands a giant alien creature down to attack them, and Daly suddenly gets a chime on his phone saying that his pizza got delivered. He pauses the game, and everyone takes a moment to exhale. Walton walks over and begins to talk to the creature, and they explain that she was a woman named Jillian, and Robert turned her into one of those because she refused to play along. Robert gets his pizza and returns to the game, shooting Valdak and making him fall to the ground. He holds his blaster to his head, and Valdak pleads for him to end it. Daly says that would be against Space Fleet code, leans down to pat him on the shoulder, and then says, "Sorry, bud," breaking character again. They go back to the ship, cheering and chanting for Daly's excellence yet again. He grabs onto Nanette and pulls her in to kiss her. She pushes him away and then slaps him in the face, and the others suddenly cease their clapping. Daly grips his cheek with a malevolent smirk. He reaches his arm out again, and Nanette winces. He then puts his hands down and says that he will show her mercy today, saying she should reconsider tomorrow, and then leaves the game. They tell her that she will get used to the kissing, and that it's not like it can go beyond that. She looks at them confused, and Walton suddenly starts to take off his pants. She begs him to stop, but he pulls them down to reveal a barren mound where his dick should be, explaining that he altered their code since Space Fleet is a family-friendly show. She looks inside her skirt, and is enraged by the invasion, saying once again they need to find a way to defeat him. They tell her there's nothing they can do since he's a god, and she quietly retorts saying he's smart, but not a god, claiming there must be a mistake somewhere in the code that could be exploited. She brings up the communication device that he was holding and points out how even though the game is offline, it was able to make contact to the outside world to tell him that his pizza had arrived, so at the very least, it's connected to his home's security system. They tell her that device is the only one in existence, and that it leaves when he leaves. She sits down at the computer and then hacks into the mainframe, and gets to some kind of back-end screen where you can supposedly invite a friend to the game using a custom message. She types it out and we cut back to the elevator. Regular Nanette walks back into the office and receives an Infinity invite on her phone, with it stating it's from Robert. Quote, "Help! Many people trapped inside Infinity on Daly's computer. Contact Cyber Police." She looks at the message very confused and then walks up to Robert and asks if she can talk to him for a second. She asks if he sent the invite. He says no, confused, and she brings up the weird message about the people trapped inside the game, and he brushes it off as it's probably just a spam bot telling her not to worry about it. He then asks her if she opened the link. She says no, and he walks away. We cut to Walton back on board the Callister, bashing his head against the desk over and over. The ship then comes back online, and they all nervously run around since Daly's way earlier than usual. Nanette excitedly runs to the door thinking it's herself or the cops, and in walks Daly. Everyone silently stares at their stations while he paces around. He starts to monologue and then scolds everyone for screwing up his vision. Nanette tries to take responsibility to save the others and tells Daly that he's sick and needs help. He sticks his hand out to punish her, and Lowry jumps in front, promising that Nanette will behave and just needs a bit of time. He says okay, and then suddenly Lowry starts to groan and contort, her bones cracking with legs springing from her spine. She morphs into the alien creature from before, and Nanette looks up in horror. Daly says the look on her face makes him happy. He orders the others to take Lowry to the brig and to find a barren planet that they can dump her on. He tells Nanette to stay here and think about her attitude, and exits the game. She leans against a window sobbing and then looks out to a distant rumbling. A wormhole of some kind opens up and the screens mention an incoming message. She runs back to the console claiming it must be the update patch pre-installing, proving that somehow Robert's patched version is still connected to the internet. Walton tells her to stop this train of thought before someone else gets turned into a monster, and someone points out that there's no way they would have been left with full console permissions. She then suggests that they fly the ship into the wormhole, hitting the system firewall, and perhaps deleting their code, which would set them free. They say there's no way to pilot the ship while he's away, and Nanette suggests that they wait until he's on pause. They discuss how it would be possible to keep him on pause for long enough time for their plan to work, and Nanette says if they can get his communication device, she can contact herself in the real world. She says she's got some pictures online that she definitely wouldn't want to get leaked, and can use that as leverage to ensure that their plan goes accordingly. Walton still protests, Daly has always won, and he will win this time. He explains that originally, it was just him and Daly aboard the ship, and he tried everything he could to break and torture Walton, eventually getting the DNA off a lollipop from Walton's son, cloning him, and then making Walton watch as he tossed his son out into space. He tears up, explaining the gruesome details, and that Daly will do it again and again, and that he can just bring them all back, even if they did escape. Nanette holds his shoulders and tells him they will find a way to get the lollipop out of Daly's apartment, and then he needs to trust her. Robert makes it home and enters the game. Nanette is fully in character, and he says they need to investigate another planet. Daly starts to make a plan, but Nanette offers to just take her with him, trying to exploit the little crush that he has on her. He accepts, and they beam down to the surface. He looks around with his transponder, and they spot a broken shuttle across a pond to investigate. Nanette then takes off her suit and invites him to go swimming. He tries to stay in character, saying that they need to focus on their mission, but she continues, and he begins to sway a bit. He finally submits and walks into the pool. They beam the transponder back to the ship and use it to log into Nanette's PhotoCloud account. They find her provocative pictures, and we cut back to the office. She gets a message with one of the photos and gets a call. Walton, with a robotic voice mod, tells her to do exactly as instructed, or they will leak the pictures. Nanette says she will comply and heads out of the office. Meanwhile, in the pond, Daly begins to say that they need to head back, and Nanette does everything she can to keep him occupied. She pretends that something grabbed her foot and starts a splash fight with him. Back in the real world, Nanette gets to the balcony outside his house and sees Robert inside, sitting in his chair. They confirm the rest of what she needs to do and ends the call, with the group beaming the transponder back down to the planet. Nanette calls and orders a pizza to Robert's apartment, and he pauses the game to go see why the door is ringing. She opens the glass door and heads into his apartment, opening up the mini fridge while he's distracted by the delivery guy. She finds the lollipop as well as several other forms of bagged DNA. She swaps out his little interface device, and then opens the invite from before and accepts it. Having gotten the signal, they fly the ship out towards the wormhole. Nanette makes it out of the apartment just in time, and Robert sits back down to re-enter the game. His device doesn't work, and he opens up a new one. They see that there is a risky but faster route to get to the wormhole before it closes through an asteroid belt, and debate whether to take it or not. Robert leans back and places the new disc on his head, it beeps, and he resumes the game. He's back on the beach, stranded, and comms to the bridge for clarification on what's going on. Nanette commands them not to answer it. The wormhole is beginning to close, so they decide to veer into the asteroid belt. Daly puts his suit back on and walks into the abandoned ship. The computer tells him what they are planning on doing, and he flies out to intercept them. They bump and scrape through the asteroid belt, narrowly dodging being crushed, while Daly threatens them over the comms. Just as they're about through the belt, they hit an asteroid, disabling their thrusters. Daly maniacally laughs as the computer tells him what happened, and Walton runs out to see if he can fix the thrusters. As he's messing with the electronics, he patches through to talk to Daly, and tells him that he's sorry for exploiting his genius and reaping all the profits of the company. He then clarifies, saying he would have liked to have said that, and then curses him for throwing his son out of the airlock. He pulls the lever down and immediately is incinerated by the flames of the thrusters. His screams echo through the walls of the ship as it begins to boot back online. The wormhole gets smaller and smaller as they fly towards it, collapsing just in the nick of time, right as they pass through, leaving Daly stranded in space. They all scream and warp on the ship, heading towards their doom. We cut to black. A moment passes by, and they are all awakened on the ship yet again, in regular suits, and the receptionist no longer an alien. They figure that the firewall must have stripped away all the Space Fleet mods and uploaded them to the cloud on the game's official servers. We find out that not only did it return them to being normal, but it also removed all of Daly's rogue code, including disabling his controls with the interface and software. Daly starts to rapidly press all the buttons on his ship as his computer confirms that he's stuck there. The doors to the bridge open up and in come Lowry and the guy who played Valdak. They now have an infinite, procedurally generated universe at their disposal, and they fly away triumphantly. Alarms begin to go off on Daly's ship, rogue universe detected, repeating over and over. Daly tries to exit the game, as it says deletion in process. He repeats exit game again and again as the lights in his ship begin to flicker out, then all the stars around him too. And Captain Robert Daly is left laying in his chair, permanently stuck in an all-black void. This is an episode that I really look back fondly on. It's one of the most enjoyable, fun stories that really sets itself apart from the others with its style. Now, it is going to be judged by the same standard as the other episodes, so while I do have multiple criticisms, it is great in its own way. First off, we've got the classic annoying trope of hackers and programmers just instantly breaching the mainframe with computers that they've never even touched before. Next up, we have a couple plot holes that I want to go over. I'm pretty forgiving with suspending my disbelief, I feel like, but these were a bit much. When Nanette sends the invite out to real-world Nanette, why would she not say anything in the message about not telling Robert about this? They're obviously going to get in trouble if he sees it regardless. Secondly, I can get how the DNA swab could create the physical body of the people, but how on earth does the DNA supply the memories too? It would be so easily explained by saying that the game scans your memories and each of the employees have engaged or playtested the software at some point, but that aspect is just not even addressed at all. It's just assumed that cloning someone off of their DNA just creates an instant perfect replica. Makes no sense. I also wanted to mention a final scene showcasing a player in the game interact with them who's voiced by Jesse Pinkman. Serves more as a funny after-credit scene, so I thought I would just mention it here since it doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, other than confirming that they're now connected to the internet, which we already basically knew. Again, I really, really like this one. I'd say it's in my top 3 favorites in terms of just enjoyment. It does, however, have some issues that detract from the story and make me think that they could have done a bit of a better job. Concept, 4 out of 5. Execution, 3 out of 5. Ending, 5 out of 5, giving USS Callister a total of 12 points.